Welcome back to the shop. My name's Jamie, and in today's video, we are wrapping up the series on the Brown & Sharpe surface grinder preservation. This is a machine that is over 100 years old, and you can tell, having gone through these videos, there's a lot of wear and tear that this machine has gone through. But here at the end of the video, you're going to see that the results that this thing can still produce by a rookie like me, this is the first time I've done any of this work, the results are actually pretty good. I learned a ton during this process, and I'm hoping that you'll pick up some things if you want to do this at home. And, this video shows that, you can do it if you take your time and you're patient. This piece here that I'm holding is an example of the first test piece that I did after going through the surface grinder. I got to within parallel by about 5/10, and so not perfect. And I know that there's a few things that I could have done a little bit better along the way. But the core fundamentals of what I'm about to show, I think would be really helpful for, anyone that's looking to regrind their chuck, either because they've just moved their surface grinder or just as a normal maintenance process. Enjoy the video. I really enjoyed making this in this series. As always, please provide comments. If you see something that you would do differently, let me know about it. I'd love to hear it, and I can learn through this process as well. With my surface grinder, I'm unable to grind the bed flat. Actually, what's happening is the belt's too long, and as I lower the grinding head down, the weight that tensions the belt is hitting the case. So I cannot grind this flat, which would be your first step when you're setting up a new mag chuck and getting your table squared away. Here you can see this is as low as I can bring the grinding wheel down. I'm still about an inch short of where I need to be. I'm sure over time this belt has stretched, and so as we look down here at the weight mechanism, I have it it's just about hitting the case, so I can't get it any lower than this. But what I'm going to do now is just check to see how much out of balance this might be. So I've just set this up here. I'm at 0 on my indicator. I've just mounted it here to the spindle for reference. And we'll go a little bit left to right. And see that I am just about, it's got a 1/1000th, looks to be let's see which direction this is going. So it's got a crown. Looks like it has a bit of a crown in the middle by about 1/1000th on that first leg. So let's bring it in and let's see what this. Okay, so this tells me that it's higher in the front by almost 2. And let's see if that same crown. Yep. So I'm at about 2/1000ths high compared to the back section. It starts to creep up around 3 and then comes back down around 2. All right, well, that's good to know. So as I'm setting up the rest of the chuck grinding, I'll have a sense of, by grinding both the bottom of the chuck and the top of the chuck, I'll be able to work that out of it, the pitch of the table, and have an absolutely flat surface at the top of the mag chuck, which is ultimately where we need it anyway. Moving on to getting the chuck prepped. I don't have precision stones, but I do have a new Norton grinding stone, which I use to just rub across the surface, just to take off any large nicks that might be there. I do the same thing to the chuck, both top and bottom, again, just to see if there's any high marks that are on there. So with the chuck, the bottom of the chuck now facing up, I've marked it with some blue marker so I can see where I've ground and what I have left to do. You know, I find that first touch off, just touching the blade down to the material, it always feels like you're right there, but then you keep cranking it down. It never seems to want to touch. My first touch here on this bottom right-hand corner was actually a bit deep. So now I've kind of slowed that roll a little bit and start to get in a rhythm and get the machine working back and forth here. So I've dropped it down about a thou on this second pass. You can see I've got a lot of high spot here in the front, and it tapers off down to the back. And that actually makes a lot of sense when we think about when I did measure on the bed, the way that the bed was higher in the front. So going through this process by grinding both the bottom first and the top of the chuck, you'll normalize any of those variances, and you should end up at the end with a very flat top surface, which is ultimately the goal of what we're trying to do here. I'm using the mist coolant system that I set up in that other video. It worked out really well. I ended up using a lot of coolant, a lot of flow. I wanted to make sure to keep the dust down from the grit, but also keep everything cool and as close to the same temperature as possible. So here's what it looks like after the second pass. So this is about 2 thou depth of cut going back and forth. You can see it's fairly consistent left to right with the high side here in the front. This next picture here is after the third. Here's the fourth pass. You can see I've got a little bit left here in that top left-hand corner. And now at this point, I've gone over the fifth pass, and I'm doing a bit of a final pass series here. So there's a lot of back and forth that I've done. I've actually eliminated a lot of that from the video. But the idea here is that you get down to a point where you've taken, in my case, I've removed all of the blue marker, and I know that I'm totally flat. But now you simply go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you get essentially no spark remaining. They call that spark out. And so here's the finish that I have left. It's very consistent, although it's not perfect. And by perfect, maybe you think maybe that should be a mirror finish. However, you actually don't. Now listen, I'm not saying this is perfect and this is exactly what you want. It worked out well for me. But you actually don't want a mirror finish because you do want some bit of surface texture ever so slightly just to help hold the materials down when you are using the mag chuck. It gives a little bit more coefficient of friction, which is helpful. Here I'm just doing a quick pivot test to see if it's indeed flat. And it appears to me that, you know, I've got good flatness on the bottom side of this chuck. I do seem to like the pivot test. So as I have this, setting this up for its final resting place, just give it another kind of pivot and see if indeed now the table is flat. Everything looks pretty good. I'm happy with where we're at. And now I'm going to, I want to make sure that it's lined up front and back with the back of my grinding wheel. So I've got a little machinist square there to check both ends of it to see that I have it indeed in the right position. I have the chuck mounted to the table. This hold down is tight. The hold down here on the right is snug to loose, just in case when this starts heating up as we are grinding on it, it'll allow it to expand a little bit. The other thing we'll do is when we do the grind, we'll have it in the locked magnet on position, because we want to grind this just as flat as we can in the operating condition that it'll be in. So here I have it zeroed out on that back left corner, and we'll see how much travel I can get. Yeah, so I just ran out of travel right there. All right, so from 0, which is the high spot, it should be going left, yep, which is down. So it goes down to 3, and then comes up a little bit to around 2. I'm not quite here at the end, but that's still verifying that my high spot is that top left. And as we go towards the front, it should also start falling downwards. And it is. So we're down here at about 4 thou. If I go back to the left, yep, it should get a little bit deeper right there. So I'm at 5. And then it comes back up. So everything's still holding true as far as the geography or the layout of this chuck. Top left-hand corner is the tallest, still tallest in the back and pitching towards the front. So as far as dressing the wheel, this is a dark wheel. It's a little bit hard to tell when you've dressed it that you have, contact evenly across the entire width of the grinding wheel. So I used a little bit of pencil to try to make it a little bit darker. One of the things here about dressing that I learned is you only want to make one pass. Make one pass, lower the stone about 1/1000th, and then make another pass, but don't go back and forth, back and forth. You actually want to keep that roughness that a single pass. And here you can see me going across from left to right, getting rid of that pencil mark. This was my final dress of the wheel, and everything looks nice and square. Here, it's hard to tell on the left-hand side. Sorry, I didn't zoom out. On the very left-hand side, you'll see I'm bringing up a paint stirrer, a wooden paint stirrer. But that's helpful to get some of the grit out of the wheel and help dress it. All right, now we're ready to get going. We're gonna start our first pass on the top of the chuck. Everything's mounted nicely, the wheel's dressed. Lots of coolant in my coolant bottle, and we are ready to get going. I'm a little gun shy here after having driven the grinding wheel into the base so abruptly when I was trying to touch off, but I'm just taking my time, just moving it down one small bit, and yeah, it does seem to take forever to get that very first touch. I do know that I'm working on the high spot, so if I can touch off here, I'll be good to go for the rest of the operation. I'm bringing that down. I'm turning it down with my right hand, but I just can't believe that I haven't touched off yet. So back it off, give it a quick look. Sure enough, haven't yet touched off. Keep bringing it down. I'm double checking, making sure that it's actually going down. All right, now we're getting serious. Got the dial indicator, making sure that I can keep an eye on these measurements. All right, and we have touched down. Excellent. All right, here we go. So after first pass, we're going down 1/1000th of an inch. And surprisingly, that actually cleaned up a significant amount of the table. So I feel like having ground in the bottom helped get that table more into alignment. And so just 2 passes and we were, really like 75, 80% of the way there. So you can tell that I like the result here. I'm not going to count, but I must have wiped this thing down and basically pet it like a dog probably 20 times here in the next 15 seconds. So after 2 passes, so about, I took about 2, maybe 3 thou off, and it actually cleaned up much nicer than I was anticipating, as far as it being generally balanced with a little bit of a low spot in the middle. I've got this really big divot right here, and the finish on this isn't perfect, so I still, for the final pass, I'm going to dress this wheel one more time. I'll take it a lot slower, but all in all, I'm happy with that result from a flatness perspective. And now I'll just see if I can get a little bit better on that surface finish. So here we are last time. This is our final set of passes on the top of the chuck. I've gone back and forth already a number of times with, if I see spark, I'm going to keep going until we essentially spark out. That will ensure the most accurate flatness that I can provide and a nice, smooth, consistent top surface. This is the part of the video where I really ask for comments and feedback. To me, this looks like a really good surface. What do you think? To grind the back fence on the chuck, I'm going to simply, I've installed the chuck, I've put it up about as high as I'm comfortable so I still have a good grip. And then I'm going to just use the wheel as it is. I know that Keith has a video where he puts a back bevel into that so that only the leading edge is doing the cutting on the back rake. But I don't have a dressing tool that will do that kind of bevel, and I believe that this backside wheel will have a natural high spot, and if it's perfectly parallel, I think that would be fine. But if there's a natural high spot, it's that high spot that will be doing the cutting. So I think regardless of whether you put the back bevel in it or do it parallel, I think you get the same result. But I'm going to do it this way, and let's see how it turns out. All right, that looks like we are in pretty good shape. It's a nice clean cut. As you saw, that after I marked it with the blue, just took a nice clean swipe. So I think we are in good shape. One way to test for flatness is to actually grind apart and then measure that for parallelism. So what better part than the dressing wheel chuck here? So I just knocked off any burrs that might be on that. We will go ahead and give this surface finish on both sides, see how it looks. So not the best surface finish. Got some ripples going on. More practice. It looks like I've actually got a low spot right here. I think we're going to go over this one again. All right, over here at the surface plate, we're just going to do some measurements and see how this looks. Just going to use this stone to take off any burrs. Okay. All right. Got this height gauge and a 5/10 micrometer or test indicator. Let's see how this works. So it's fluttering right between 0 and half a thou. Zero, 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 zero. My surface finish could leave a little bit to be desired. Looks like this corner right here is a little low. This surface finish, not so great. Admittedly, I went a little bit fast on the backside. Right back up to 0. Half. Yeah, the surface finish, you can see it bouncing there. Surface finish is everything with surface grinding. So generally I would say this is, very parallel, with the exception of, my surface finish, which is causing some, half thou to 1 thou variations. But overall, I would say I'd give myself a B, maybe a B minus, because I could have been a little bit more patient on the backside. And while I was doing this video, Amazon just delivered my new grinding wheel. So the thing that I've done here has been on a 60 grit, and the new one that I have is a 46 grit. So our friends at Amazon just delivered this grinding wheel. Let's take a look. This was about 40 bucks on Amazon, so not terribly expensive. Things I like about it, it's white, so if you're getting buildup of metal inside the wheel, you can tell a lot easier. This is also 46 grit. I think one of the things that I'm learning here is higher grit does not mean better surface finish. Probably to the contrary, it gets hotter. What I've been using is a 60 grit. This is a 46. But let's give this guy a spin on the wheel and see how it goes. That is 1,000 times better. Much more consistent. So the surface finish on that, with that new wheel, 10 times better. Using basically the same technique, which is rookie technique. So let's see if how this measures up. Pun intended. All right, that's at 0. We're over at about half, 0, 0. So not perfect, but pretty good. I think with some more practice, I could get better at all of these things. But that, my friends, is one way to set up a surface grinder, even though it's over 100 years old. Thanks for watching my videos here on the surface grinder. I really appreciate it. It's been quite a long journey to get this thing working, but I don't know, I kind of like those results. But thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Till next time. Catch you later. Thanks.